Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Sean Carey with the Evolving Practice Podcast, and I'm with my co-host.
Dr. Bill Moss.
And we are so excited to be with you today. We have a really great episode, and we've both been super busy. There's a lot going on. This is our second recording this week, and this is also in the day, which we both naturally do a little bit better with than at night. So we both have a lot of energy, probably a lot of caffeine, and we're ready to share some good stuff.
Maybe they'll notice a difference.
Yeah. So the title of this episode is What We Got Right Early On. And one of the nice things about this is that we can talk about it from both as chiropractors getting started in chiropractic and then also as energetic healing practitioners. So what comes to mind to you, Bill, when you hear this?
Yeah, I feel like this is a principle-based answer. When I started on my journey, it's like sometimes you commit to things that you maybe don't fully know why you're doing or understand. I think there's an unknown. And, I went from a very different paradigm of healing. And what I mean by that is like I grew up in a very medically minded family. And if you listen to other episodes, discuss that. Like my child, it was a very medicine first approach and method. And I didn't really judge it. I didn't good or bad. I think I thought it was good actually. And I blamed being sick for external factors. So one of the first things that comes up for me is what I right early on. I did one of the things instilled in me is like if I started a new sport or tried a new sport, I wasn't allowed to stop until I completed my commitment for the season, right? And I remember I played football in fifth grade, and I'm not very big, and nor was I then. And I got crushed. I mean, I got crushed. It was a rough season. I didn't want to go, but my dad was like, "You decided you wanted to do this. I want you to stick through it." And when I first got or discovered chiropractic, I remember when I got under care with the person who influenced me to become a chiropractor. I couldn't get into his office, so I went to my old one. I got an adjustment. I was already feeling a lot better, but I wanted to establish a new relationship with this new guy. And he did his assessment. I remember him giving me like recommendations for like a long-term plan. And at this point, I had seen the value of how chiropractic helps me. I really the consistency was based on my want, but this guy was laying out like a plan for me, and I wasn't really into it at first, but I did it because I liked chiropractic results, and I got such good results by being consistent, and I mean life changing results where my paradigm of what I thought the human body was capable of. And I had asthma and allergies that I managed seasonally. I got sick very often in the winter, and I was a distance runner. So sometimes I experienced injuries. And over 6 months, I just had all of this healing. But the biggest one was my anxiety and panic attacks and everything. So, I was very much not wanting a commitment or structure. And then that was placed in front of me, and it was one of the best things that I ever did at that point because it kind of launched me into a new understanding of like what healing is.
I love that.
Yeah, so it was a pretty big shift. Like, and I think this episode, what did we get right when we didn't even know? And it was like,
Yeah.
Some of the values that were instilled in me um, were what I got right at the beginning, and I utilized that kind of commitment in a new arena, and it really did work. It really did work for me. So, what comes up for you with this subject? Like, what did you get right early on?
For me, there's a couple things that like what first comes to my mind is getting started in practice.
Mm.
But there was two things that really I think I started with that were very helpful. One was that I've always been a learner. I just love to learn. It's kind of one of my strengths. I'm really good at absorbing different information, and it's just I'm always learning about different things.
Mm.
And when I was in school, like when I graduated, I was still like really in this mode of learning. Okay, like what else is there to learn, and what else? And that
Yeah.
was something that really helped me to have a level of confidence in practice, because I was prepared by the time I actually got to practice. By the time it was like to work with people. The second piece for me was this aspect of mentorship,
Mm.
where like I really sought out successful mentors, and I had some amazing mentors. Both you and I have, and they skyrocketed my progression in terms of chiropractic by, decades, as far as what you can learn and what they can see where your thinking's not or off in a way that could kind of take you off track as far as success or patient care or undermining the results you'll get with patients. They really helped me. There was years of sitting down with mentors, frequently going to many different seminars, building relationships, dinner at people's houses and restaurants and like all those things. But people invested a lot of time in me and energy and really helping to create a good framework. And that was something that I'm forever grateful for. But it was also like me putting out that desire to have a mentor. I knew I
Mhm.
needed successful mentors to do this.
That's really good. I didn't even consider that. And a lot of my background with running is I always did my best when I had a coach I believed in. And once I graduated uh, undergrad, I had a coach I liked in undergrad. Um, and well, I had my high school coach motivated me to love the sport. I fell in love with the sport because of him, but he wasn't the greatest coach as far as like metrics and getting people to do that well. Like I got better and I love the sport. So, but then secondarily, I had a coach in college that had a good method, but it wasn't a great method for everyone. Like I burned
Mm.
out a lot under his training. And then I had a friend who was a really good runner. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to write my own plans. Will you do it? And he wrote me really good plans and adapted. And I got really one to one attention. And I saw how much further I could go. And I got really good. And at that point, it's true. And I've actually been looking at that in my own life is, as initiates, we become self leaders in many ways.
Right.
Um, but it's always nice to like reflect on who am I actually letting lead, because usually you
Yep.
have influences and mentors across the board. But I think I agree with you. I've always been able to see the value of having a coach, having a mentor. And, I just got off the phone with another one of our colleagues before we got on this podcast, Dr. Nikki Pearson. And I spoke to her for like 10 minutes and I was like, shit, there's so much here. Like, I'm just more motivated again. I can do better.
Yep.
I can do more. I can bring more of myself. And it wasn't like, oh, I want to do all the things Nikki's doing. It's like, oh, I'm just excited about the direction I'm going with aspects of
Right.
my practice. And I think that's a really, I'm glad you brought that up because mentorship, it really is a huge catalyst for growth at any point. And you need that, right? Like if you're partnering with a practitioner, you really need a person that's going to serve as like a guide, a mentor, and a person to help see your blind spots, if you will.
Absolutely, and it's something that both you and I still do. Like it's still, very much a part of our training as far as the mystery school, but also in practice too. Like I have a group I meet with every week on Thursdays, and we, work on communication. Because if I don't have that good framework, like sometimes I'll use words that maybe not the person in front of me doesn't understand, or I can kind of go off on a tangent a little bit too ADHD, and it really helps give me a framework and structure that communicates well to my patients and clients. And it's made such a big difference as far as the office there.
Yeah, I love that
And
reminder.
yeah, it's something that I really thrive with having that support, and it also echoes into the energy healing work as well. Like when I first got into it, I really thrived with it. But one of the reasons was that I was continually putting myself, like our guy Jordan, when he was
Mm.
offering meditations and these different things, like I was going to all those that I could really, and I was helping him out with a lot of different things when volunteering time to assist in like bigger events and things like that. And a lot of the stuff, like it wasn't convenient, it was an hour drive each way to his office, maybe like twice a week, and then maybe 2 hours for an event, or 2 to 3 hours being there. So it was quite a time commitment. But at the same time, what I got out of it was just so valuable, and it really helped launch me forward in a way that I'm not sure would have been possible without that.
Mm.
Because it's just like the continual support that you end up getting when you're around somebody who's really thriving in their field.
Mm.
Because if you're with somebody who's like who's worked with tens of thousands of clients and had great success, they'll be able to understand nuances to what you're doing that's incorrect. That like they can just be like, oh, do this a little bit differently, and then you start doing it a little bit differently, and you get better results. Or
Yeah.
try speaking this way to somebody or using this analogy, and that may have taken them 5 or 10 years to really get right, and then you can start out of the gate with that.
That's a really, I kind of want to speak on a little bit on to what you were saying regarding Jordan, and my first experience with the spiritual lineage of which we were trained in the modern mystery school is the first class I did was with Jordan up in Boston. And right from the get-go, I was, that's a 5.5 hour trip for a 2 day
Yeah,
class that I'm staying over your hotels, you're investing money, time, and travel. And then thereafter, I did a lot of work by coming up to Boston for the first couple of years because there wasn't a community essentially where I was, and what did exist was very limited. So my model of what people were doing in this work was Jordan. So therefore, I almost felt like part of my shaping early was like this is all I saw was bigger classes, professional teacher and healer in the healing work. For me, I was a professional. I was a chiropractor for
yeah,
multiple years at this point, and I was a teacher internationally. Like I needed something to be very professional that would have even made me consider that would make sense in a non-preachy way. Because you and I at that point had been through like tons of sales training. We've been through lots of chiropractic mentorship. We've spoken at conferences. We've been sold to. We've been lied to. We had a lot of experiences. And for
yeah,
me, I was like, this is a professional class that makes sense, is practical, and it's not so far reaching that I can't really integrate in my life. So I think also I tell a lot of people that I work with now that when they come to see me is like my first couple of years I had to massively travel. And I still appreciate the journey of how far sometimes we have to go to, um, because there's growth in it not being the easiest thing, right? The so accessible. And I found that to be true as I've grown my own community in Pennsylvania is people get lazy. It's easier to be like, well, I'll do it another time, or because it's
yeah,
offered all the time and it's right down the road from me. So for early on, I think that's a big thing is like, no matter what modality, what healing you are seeking, there are people that have traveled worlds away to
yeah.
to do it. And I think that was something too. My chiropractor that I loved wasn't easily accessible either. It was kind of a little bit of a trip for me. So I
Yeah.
think that's a principle that also existed. That's been very important to me on my healing journey too.
I think that kind of brings me to another point too, like to continue on this conversation with this is one thing that I've always done like in practice and in the energy healing that I think has really served me was to basically like see who's the best and then help like get that whatever from the best. So like I
Mm.
want whoever was the best, who I viewed as the best chiropractor, like I wanted that person to be my teacher, or the
Mm.
best coach, I wanted that person.
Yeah.
As far as like if the energy healing, like I didn't want it. Like I just wanted the best care for me, like
Yeah.
because sometimes I think people like they don't actually ask like what do I need. The underlying question isn't what do I need or what would benefit me the most. Like it's like okay, like kind of what's cheap and what's easy and what's not too much. Like it's not going to stretch me too much.
Yeah.
Uh, and sometimes it's like we actually need to be stretched. One, we need to something that's going to give us more impetus to create, and then two, like for the work that we've done. I mean, I've spent years traveling internationally at this point in time. I've many thousands and thousands of hours from different master teachers, and it's really enabled me to provide a high level of service. Uh, but it's something that took a long time to get that. And now I feel confident, like sitting in front of somebody, believing that I can give them the best type of care
Yeah.
because I did that.
It's actually a great point, and because that value matters. And I think as practitioners, a lot of times people in the business of healing which we've spoken on, is, why is my number different than somebody else's down the block for
Mm.
any service that I provide? And it's like, that's the part beneath the iceberg. That is the major difference. There's a depth of knowledge, experience, learning, and time and excellence invested in whatever that exchange may be. That
Yeah.
I believe I'm having greater success in the last year with all of my practice and everything, because I think without telling my team what we're talking about, they're embodying that essence. Like they
Yeah.
recognize that their level of investment in themselves is part of the contributing factor to the whole of what the clients are receiving. And that's super important in healing. Like all those little details add up to the value of what you're receiving. And like I'm very much with you. I I've driven 2 hours away to do a 10 session series that was weekly for 10
Yeah.
weeks, and my wife did it too, and we managed childcare through that experience. And because we understood the value, we understood the commitment, and the fruits of that were exponential. And that's why we continue to do it. And I think, like, to your point is, and I think this is why we're bringing this up, is a lot of times people won't even do that once, right?
Right. Yeah.
They're like, no, their default pattern is, I will go the cheapest, the closest, the easiest, most convenient. And then the reality is that you don't make you don't make the commitment early on, and then you never do it. So you really can't understand the full value of that.
Yeah. And Jordan, who we've mentioned, I know as part of his journey getting started with this work too, he was driving like 5+ hours oftentimes to go for trainings, like probably multiple times a week. And to have to receive a healing session, because that's part of what we need to do to do this work too, is to be in balance ourselves and to heal things that are out of balance, so we can
Yeah,
hold that space for others. But he was, yeah, driving 5 hours to go see somebody who was the best person around for him to see,
it's
and
awesome.
like each way, and doing that for years. And
Yeah,
when you look at the fruits of it, it's like, okay, like being trained by the best is really, really valuable. There's just no way to shortcut that experience. uh,
yeah, it's
yeah.
awesome. I feel like another part early on that I kind of got right was, like, using my intuition along the way.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Is I think sometimes we get to places just by going with our gut and listening to our heart. To go to chiropractic school, that was a very, like, heart decision. Going into practice, knowing where to practice, receiving the life activation, doing initiation, doing this work. A lot of that wasn't so much like this logical part of the mind of, because I rejected a lot of what I'm doing now. I rejected a lot of where I'm living now
Yeah.
along the way, but I was able to kind of go beyond the mind and make the decision from a different place. And I think early on as a kid, I did rely on that, and I've made some of the best, most joyful decisions along the way when I've gone with that. And sometimes I feel like the more information we have down the line, the more mental we make the next jump. And I know this for myself. This is like,
Yeah.
um, something I'm like, what am I working on now? This is like something I'm working on now. Is like, what are the next um, innate or inner driven decisions that I need to make that don't necessarily make sense, that will help me kind of go to my next level of service and my next level of joy in life.
And that piece, that like, it really brings in that level of like wholeness and soul when we work with our intuition like that,
Hmm.
because it is so easy, especially when you've done a lot of schooling, to like get stuck in this logical mind, but it can create so much limitations.
Yeah.
And it can really block the flow of our magic. Like, we want to be able to have a life that people don't quite understand how it works on the outside, but for you, it just is like things are falling into place the way that, like, you're being guided and they're unfolding the right way.
Hmm.
I was talking to somebody yesterday, and it was about part of like the structure of how like things work when I travel,
Hmm.
and it was like, I just felt like I couldn't really share it because there's so much of it that was actually more intuitive or energetic as far as like how the whole system falls into place. Like
Mm,
it doesn't really make logical sense if you're just going to explain it, but it
yeah,
all just ends up syncing up and working the right way. And it's like
yeah.
the support you need is, falls into place and all these different avenues. And yeah, it just becomes absolutely amazing.
It is kind of true, and I'm experiencing some of that with coverage this year. And one of our avid listeners, and actually somebody we had on the podcast, Tara, she I have an old time chiropractor, if you want to call him that. He's just retired, practiced for 40 years, does network. She got to see him while I was up in Toronto doing chiropractic. She's like, you should have him on the podcast. He's wonderful. And I was like,
Oh
oh, thank
yeah.
you. But I'm having a lot of that fall into place now. Like I went away, for some programs this month. So I was out of town and we had vacation, and I still had a really great month in practice. And the days I was in have just been phenomenal. The people I'm working with, the classes I'm building, like everything seems to be working really well. And next
Yeah.
month, which is probably this month when this gets released, is we're expecting our second child, and there's variability of when that baby's going to come into the world, and there's all this unknown of when am I going to be out, and what's that going to do to the flow and stuff. And it's interesting. I'm really glad I had a month like last month, because I'm like, things do work out, like you said. They
Yeah.
really do. When they don't, logically, they actually seem like they shouldn't work out, or it's not going to be better, or it couldn't be better. Oh, I didn't plan better. What would that look like? And then yet it kind of does. So it's nice that I had a little bit of an experience to lean on, very close to this next
Yeah.
kind of month of transition. And I think there's a way that I know it'll happen the way it happened, not because I didn't work, but because I stepped out of my comfort zone to just make sure I could do the best I could. And I think that matters a lot.
I think it definitely makes such a big difference. One of the things I'm so grateful for with that is really leaning on the intuition, is that it helps me to know like what I need to worry about and what I don't need to worry about, or not
Mm-hmm.
worry, but like things that like could potential problems.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I had a few years ago, I got a huge, big tax bill at the end of the year, and it wasn't something that I was expecting, so I was stressing out about it. And then when I was checking in about it, I was like, "No, you don't have to worry about it. It's fine." And then my accountant got back to me like a few days later. He's like, "Oh, sorry, I messed up. I forgot this to factor in this other thing, or I forgot this write off, or however it was. But you actually don't owe anything." So instead of like being really stressful, it
Yeah.
was like everything was properly prepared and handled in advance. But it was because of the like using that intuition of like, oh, I don't actually have to worry about this. And
Mm.
so many times over the years, there's things that I might be like on a logical mind level. You're like, oh, this is a problem. Your intuition's like, no, it's good.
Yeah.
And then there are those other things that we might think aren't problems or little things, but sometimes it's like, no, that's actually something that you really need to fix up because it could be an Achilles heel type situation.
That's a
And if
really
you
good.
don't have that awareness, it can like you can get distracted by the wrong things, and then miss out on the things that you really need to put your focus on.
That's a really good point. It's almost like the little details are like really important, and most people just neglect those. But then
Yeah,
there's these big things that we worry so much about, and oftentimes they get handled. I see how that works very quickly in my life. The more we progress and the more we do, it's like the little things add up so much to everything being handled, and then the big
yeah,
things get handled. So and that's nice, because honestly, the little things are the easier ones to manage. And I think early in practice, that's kind of true too. It's like what
yeah,
else do we get right? Is like when you the big picture can be so overwhelming. Like I remember one of our friends at DE. He would always be like, "What do you have a practice? A bus load of 30 people showed up in your office. Could you take
mm,
care of them?" Kind of deal. And I always like that little game, like, because it
yeah,
challenges you to be like, how efficient are you? How fast can you be, but yet provide service? How well everything in your office. So it kind
yeah,
of it gets you back to thinking ahead, like how much you want to take care of, how much can you take care of, because I think at this point in your schedule, when I first went into practice, I kind of just thought people would come. So once I realized what my mentors were talking about, is you don't get the right people to help you, if you don't create the right space to see people, if you're not open at the right times. And it doesn't mean obsess over every one of those things, but it means you need to have awareness around them, and that's how you see more people. But if you're only available like an hour a day and you're showing up not ready to go, and you don't have a computer system or a good way to take payment or reschedule them, like how are you ever going to hold a container to like help people to get better? And I think we, because of our mentors that you talked about early on, had a lot of like details and principles in practice. And I would say, like, we're talking about that transition from going to chiropractic to being a professional energy healer, is like, I don't feel like I need to be reminded very often of like, oh, there's a best way to take care of people by having systems. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually funny as you were sharing that about the chiropractic with the bus. I was thinking that in terms of the energetic healing too, because it's like that is a part of my framework. It's like I want to make sure I have enough of like energy supplies, because some of the sessions we do, like there's supplies that go along with it, or maybe manuals and those things.
Yeah.
That you always want to make sure that there's enough, because sometimes things just pop in, and there's people who you have to teach a class to, or there's a bunch of sessions that will happen really quickly, and having all those supplies is super important.
Yeah, it's something as simple as that. It's like you go to get ready and you don't have the manuals, and it's like, all that stuff gets amplified in a
Yeah,
practice, right? Like when you're not prepared, it might only happen one time, but it always gets amplified, right? And it's like a
absolutely.
glaring spotlight of like where you're not ready or where you drop the ball. And you and I at this point know how big that is. And sometimes, for me, if I'm reflecting, I feel like my staff finally is really embodying and embracing that understanding that those little things are such a big deal and they really add up.
And in all aspects of life too. Something that's made a huge difference for me this past month. It's kind of silly, but it's like meal prep. And because oftentimes, like, I just have really long days, and things would there'd be different things can like pop into your lap when you're running like the two businesses, right? So it's like your day can sometimes, there's a whole bunch of extra stuff that you need to end up doing, and I wasn't always good about meal prep. So at the end of the day, I might get home at 8 o'clock, and then I'm like, oh, like I'm really hungry, and I don't feel like going grocery shopping and that type of thing. I bought like a great healthy air fryer um, that can even cook steaks like right in it, and it
Wow.
has like a meat probe for the steaks. It's a tasty air fryer. I really like it, and it's non toxic and all this good stuff. But the like doing meal prep and having some like frozen steaks in the freezer allows me to have some healthy food very quickly,
Mm,
and it's just like taking a huge amount of stress off my plate in terms of just the basic things I need to support myself to do the work that I do.
so good. I feel like this is a theme. I don't know if we got into like environment as an episode, but I feel like creating the right environment for healing is like such a really powerful insight. And that's like, you just hinted on a theme. I'm always trying to refine systems, and it's actually one of my personal core values. I refer to it as refinement, is this constant like making things simpler and better to help serve. And
Yeah,
that's been, since my wife's pregnant, and she got really sick a couple months ago. She's doing fantastic the last couple months, but even our doctor was really like, you shouldn't work for multiple weeks. With She did still work more than their recommendations, but they were like, you shouldn't really do the laundry, you shouldn't be cooking, like
yeah,
your life should be simple. So for a period of time there, we had a laundry service, and we had a cleaners come, and we started taking care of all these other things. And it's amazing how that act has created a very different home environment, and we both are responding differently because we
yeah.
changed a few little factors. And like you said before, it's like when you're not willing to you know spend the money, or use the resources, or travel, or take the trip, sometimes you don't know how that's going to impact so many other areas. And it's allowed me to have a little bit more space to serve. It's allowed me to have a little bit more freedom to hang out with my family, and it's created a lot of good things just by changing some small little tweaks along the way.
I love it, and it's so funny, like, we're just not the best judges of where our energy goes sometimes. So, as far as, people, like, somebody might be scrolling on their phone, for an hour a day as far as looking at reels and that type of thing. It can be such a big time waste, or these little areas that might not seem like a big deal, but these repetitive doubts and fears, or, these things that are just, like, actually sucking huge amounts of our energy every day. And then as
Yeah.
you, like, patch those holes up so that those things aren't there anymore, like, one of the things for me that works out that I've had for years that really helps is I have the dry cleaning. They come and, drop off and pick up at my house on Tuesdays and Fridays. So I just, like, leave a bag out, and then they come and drop off the clothes. But little things like that, it can make such a huge difference, because it's not like, "Oh, no, like, I don't have clean clothes. What am I gonna do now?" Like, it doesn't happen. Everything's just, like, it's all sorted. I have my dress shirts all pressed.
Yeah.
So, and it sounds like a little thing, but but if that was done incorrectly, it's a huge amount of energy that then isn't there to do all the other things I need to do.
Yeah. And I did a lot of that stuff too at the beginning. I remember people encouraging, I remember as soon as I really moved back to Pennsylvania and got into my practice, whenever I went to seminars, I was, if I was going to go, I was staying by myself. I wasn't rooming with people anymore. Like I was going to spend extra money and be,
Yeah.
use my own hotel room. And I remember like that concept of like how do I want this to be very early on, like dry cleaning. Okay, I don't want to do my dry cleaning. Trading, bartering. When I opened this practice in Pennsylvania, I did like no bartering. Now I'm more likely to do some for certain things I understand the value with. But even the
Yeah.
massage there, I took care of the massage therapist that I don't have a massage therapist in my practice, but I have somebody I refer to. She took care of me. I took care of her. We both exchanged money always, still to
Mm.
this day. And I just thought it was cleaner and there was an understanding and you were giving an exchange. And even my staff, they're both have healing capabilities, meaning like Caitlin's a life activation practitioner, Lindsay is an Sophic Reiki practitioner. I was like, you guys trade, just exchange some cash when you're doing it. And I remember a chiropractic mentor early on saying to students, like, you pay that person 20, they pay you 20, and what each time you check each other. So you get used to that
Yeah.
actual exchange. And I didn't do that when I first went into practice, but when I had the new start in Pennsylvania, I did a lot of things that were representative of that nature. So it was a real experience. And I felt comfortable with all the time, energy, and effort that I put into my craft to receive an exchange for it.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, that the exchange is so important too. And then, like, if you really want to excel, one of the things that you'll have to do is probably, like, do more than you might be getting paid for initially,
Yeah.
in terms of, like, in terms of your study and your learning and that type of thing. Like, for
Hmm.
for me, I literally spent years volunteering where I was helping, like, set up chairs and
Yeah.
things like that at these big events where we'd have chiropractors from around the world come and speak. And because of that, I was, like, in close proximity to all these leaders in the profession, and then, I'd have a sit down time with the speakers and things like that.
You're so
But
good
it
at that.
was it again?
You're so good at that. That's like always been your thing. You like always know how to like get in the room with different people. It's a good skill.
Yeah, yeah, it was something that, and it still happens that way for me with the energetic healing work too. I have a very close relationship with the heads of the mystery school who have greatly helped me, and then I've helped them with chiropractic, and
Mhm.
it's been really good. But a part of that, I think, is being willing to also just, like, over deliver. Especially at the beginning, you really have to be willing to over deliver.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a great way to like kind of even summarize it is early on, right, in your healing journey, you're going to be doing things that maybe don't make sense right now, but they're going to serve you longer down the line. And when going into practice, you have to do 10 times more than what you think you're going to have to do.
Right.
Something else I got right going into practice, like I didn't set small action goals. I remember I lived in the basement of my current house. It's an apartment, and my in-laws own the house. And Lauren and I were living in the basement. And Frank Marcone, you remember Frank?
Yes,
He
yes,
he
yes.
said, yeah, he said I went from basement to master bedroom in my house, and I was like, oh, I like that. That's good. But
Yeah.
in the basement when Lauren and I were living there with our two cats, we had like a marker or a chalkboard, and I put on that board, I was going to attend over 100 networking meetings from uh, April 1st until I got open, which was about November. And I thought it was going to be earlier.
Wow.
And I did more than 100 networking meetings. I was going to do like over 12 events, I think, like screening events. And I did over 12 screening events. And I was going to have like however many one-to-one meetings. And I did all these things. And you know, I didn't know I wanted them to yield me being
Right.
profitable. And we had a great first month in practice. Like right from the get-go, I had like 25 new patients or more in the first couple weeks, and I had a great start, and I was at 100 visits by probably 2 months or 6 weeks or 8 weeks. It was a
Amazing.
good start, and it had a lot to do with what the unknown. And I just took these actions that I was going to commit to do more than I thought I needed to do to work out. And I think that's what people need. They don't spend enough time, and they don't do it long enough and strong enough to make a difference. And if you're trying to heal from something, you probably need to employ that principle. And if you're trying to start something within the healing profession, you probably need to adhere to that principle as well.
That was such a great share, Bill. I absolutely love that and agree with that. One thing that I don't think people all the time realize is a lot of stuff we do in business, like you and I have both done many different things. We've done screenings and talks and different types of online advertising and networking. And oftentimes those things are more like singles and doubles, if you will.
Yeah.
Like when you're new in practice, you expect to be like, I'm going to do this ad and it's going to be a home run and it's just going to be like, we're going to be slammed.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many events we did that bombed. Like there was like almost nobody that showed up. There was
Yeah.
some events that like one time we had an event where it was like filled a big room in a country club. But and many other events that were like standing room only type thing. But the vast majority of the time, it's really been like singles and doubles,
Yeah.
and not the home runs, not the grand slams. And when you're new, I think you have this a bit. I think practitioners just think it's going to be like more of the home runs and grand slams,
Mhm.
and it really is more of the like you just got to get out there a lot. You got to make a lot of interactions. As you'll get better over time as far as communicating and people wanting to confidence in those things, and people will want to work with you more. But especially at the beginning, you just got to do a ton.
Yeah. And you don't even know all the skills you're going to get by doing a ton. That's the thing, right? It's
Yeah,
like a lot of people aren't ready for the home run anyway. So say you do, I remember, seeing people do these screening events where they got like 40 new clients and all this stuff. And it's like, you want that, but a lot of people aren't even ready to handle that. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't have but it means when you get it, you have to realize that not all those people are converting. You're gonna mess up communication with a bunch of them. You're learning, and but you just worked with 40 people. Like the quicker you see people and do the process that you're going to do, the better you understand how to do it. It's kind of like, well, I'll start. And people do this in the healing work all the time. They're like, oh, I just need to be more ready before I start doing it. It's like you get ready by doing it. And that is very true in chiropractic. I was not ready to adjust somebody the first time I adjusted somebody. And I did it and it worked and it was exciting. And then I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I can do this, right?
yeah,
But it doesn't happen that way. And you need volume. Like there is the principle of volume in any aspect of your life is, people don't, oh, you really lose weight. Well, you really have to do a volume of work to start to
yeah,
turn that around. It's not like just skipping breakfast is going to solve it. It's like, no, you're gonna do it all day, every day. You're gonna do multiple things to make this
yeah,
work out. And then it will work out and you'll get lucky because you got a lot of singles, just like you said. And I have a wife. Here's another one. Here's another great suggestion. What did I got right early on is my wife's always been a very objective critic and also very encouraging. And she knows the value of showing up. And I remember having certain events or talks where, like, one person would come or two, and she would
yeah,
always say, one person's enough to do it for, because you never know where it's going to lead, and you're going to get to do it, and you're going to get experience, and it's like 100%. And I've written that through, empower thyself classes. Sometimes they're smaller classes. Chiropractic, sometimes one person. I remember I did a neurodevelopmental disorder
yeah,
workshop, and like we had all these people. So one person showed up, and I did
Wow.
it. Like I
Yeah.
did it, and she didn't
Yeah.
even convert or anything. She didn't. She didn't
Yeah.
even. They didn't do anything, but I did it, and it's actually the only one I really remember that well,
Oh, that's so funny.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I remember the one that there was one there, and I still did it, and I carry that around, so I do that in other situations. So that one
Yeah.
was for me.
Yeah, we really, it really is. There's a volume aspect to it, and whether it could be your personal practice, like you're saying, as far as working out and losing weight. It could be meditation.
Okay.
Like uh, you're gonna have, sometimes you go to sit down and meditate, and it just feels like nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe you do receive 10 different energy healings, and five of them feel like, three of them feel like the best thing ever, and then seven of them feel like you're like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
Like there's just, it's not always those home runs,
Mhm.
but we do want to be prepared. And if you really want to be a master healer, or if you want to be a master chiropractor, you're going to have to see a lot of people,
Yeah.
because it's the only way to just get that like volume of experience to be
Mhm.
able to help those really difficult cases.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people get this. I've seen people have this kind of twisted in their mind, where it's like, if you see a lot of people, you can't give good care. And I
Mhm.
think the irony is, like, I personally do my best care when we're busy. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
the most focused. Uh, it's like I'm in the zone, and then it's like you build that wealth of experience. Like even with chiropractic, like our hands move faster.
Yeah.
It's like with there's just these nuances to it that you really want to have a quite a volume to be able to gather that experience.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you can't give great care. It's, maybe the relationship doesn't have you don't talk about the weather as much,
Mhm.
but it's like, but you can give better care, which is what the person's really there for.
Yeah. Yeah, and it gets us out of our mind, which is, kind of brings us back to one of the areas we started on is, when we're younger, a lot of times that's what we're going with. We're going with how we feel in our gut and
Yeah.
feels right in the right direction, and then we get so clouded with all this information and distractions, and that there's an element of when you're seeing more people, you're doing a better job because you're not thinking so much in the sense that when you when you've been doing something for a very long period of time, you get your mind out of the way and you use these other faculties to do a good job, like these other senses, which we describe, especially in the healing work or the energy healing work that we do. We have other senses and they start to come online and they matter in the healing environment. You can't
Yeah.
measure every single one of them, but you're starting to be able to measure more of them. And anybody that's worked with a healing practitioner, they're always assessing beyond the words and what in the looks and what they hear. They're doing it from a different place with energy. So that's an important aspect in the relationship. And when we get the mind out of the way, like you said, the more you do something, the less you're using your conscious mind because it becomes a part of you. And that's kind of the goal of this. This is where you can look back and say early on, wow, I did get that right because look at it now and I can understand the development. Where, Sigafus talked about just adjusting imaginary people until they showed up. Well, was he
Yeah.
doing? Well, he was intentionally working on the skills that make you a better adjuster. And all of a sudden, when you're better at adjusting and you're doing it more and you're more efficient, more people can fill that space. So I think there's a lot of good things that we revisited here to kind of give ourselves pats on the back on
Yeah.
some of the
Yeah.
ways we've developed early on and have continued to.
Yeah, I think this has been a really fun episode, and hopefully people will learn from some of what we did right, because a lot of what we did right came from what our mentor shared with us, who also had to learn it in a difficult way. So
Yeah,
I want to share
yeah,
that with you all. And we're so excited. I believe this is our 49th episode, so it's been almost a year. We're going to have to do something exciting for, the year-long episode.
maybe we
But
should have one of our mentors on. That would be pretty cool.
yeah, I think that would be really, really good. That's a
Yeah,
great
we'll
idea.
figure it out. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, we excited. June, yeah, June, which you're probably listening to this in June, is going to be our year celebration. So we're grateful for all the downloads, subscribes, reviews, and we promise to continue to make this better. And hopefully, we'll get a mentor on during the next month.
Thank you all for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.